All right, so in this block, we've got Trump just shocked the world. Gaza and Israel are also stunned, so we're going to see what happens with that. That comes from Redacted. Piers Morgan supports killing children and women. No kidding. That comes from Jimmy Dore. And then Katie Halper interviewed Miko Peled. He said one of the most grotesque things to come out of the White House. Even the Nazis weren't this blunt about taking over Gaza and doing the ethnic cleansing. Miko Peled, who you're going to hear in this Katie Halper clip, Miko Peled's dad was General Matthew Peled, and he was one of the top generals in the Six-Day War. He then became a peace activist, an anti-war, anti-Zionist, outspoken person. He has two children. They're both authors and outspoken anti-Zionist. So this is not some fringe, far out, pro-Palestinian because they're from terrorist land or whatever. These are people who are very well connected into the Israeli culture, know its heritage and its military history, have seen it from the inside, and have spoken out as whistleblowers to, great detriment to the otherwise fruitful careers, because when you speak out against a power you're not allowed to critique, it doesn't, sometimes they debank you and stuff. I don't know. We'll maybe get to that story later. All right, so let's go to Redacted, and then we'll end with Katie Halper.
Well, Trump just shocked the world over Gaza. Was it a bold move or is it totally insane? Some are calling it the Nakba 2.0. Friend of the show, George Galloway, who hosts the Moats show, just called it Trump's Nakba. Is that too harsh? We'll discuss, just for some context here, the original Nakba happened in 1948 when Israelis killed, displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Britain, of course, the United Nations worked hand in glove to basically come up with the plan. I'm simplifying it, of course, but the Arabs rejected it. But the United Nations and Britain said, yeah, this is what we're going to do. So they went along with it and did it. But it didn't matter. They were ethnically cleansed. They were removed from their lands. So are we facing now a repeat of that? Has it already happened? What comes next? Is President Trump's quote, here it is, by the way, that just sent shockwaves through the world. The fallout has been fast and furious. Everyone trying to parse out what the president meant when he said this yesterday about Gaza. Listen.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
Where exactly are you suggesting that they should go? And two, are you saying they should return after it's rebuilt? And if not, who do you envision living there?
I envision a world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there.
So he said that, but then a little, separately, Peter Doocy asked specifically about the Palestinians from Fox News. He asked this question, and Trump kind of gave a totally different answer, I guess. Listen.
Peter?
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth.
So
and Netanyahu is sitting there saying, yes, it's mean and tough. We are mean and tough on them.
Mean and tough. All right. According to sources I've spoken with in Tel Aviv, Israeli reaction, they were shocked by this. They didn't see this coming. They didn't see this coming at all. And according to Real Clear Politics, Trump's own staff didn't see this coming. Ryan Grimm is the co-founder of the independent media website Dropsite News, co-host of Counterpoints on YouTube. And Ryan joins us now for some perspective on all of this. Ryan, I know you've been covering this deeply. You've had like 24 hours to kind of digest this. It seems like the Trump White House was kind of caught blindsided by this.
Which is funny because Trump himself said, this is not a decision that I have taken lightly. This is, the result of serious deliberation. whatever those serious deliberations were, they apparently did not include senior administration officials, or, as you just pointed out, by the look of his face, Benjamin Netanyahu. It doesn't appear like that even came up in the meeting between the two of them. Since then, Rubio has made some interesting kind of cleanup comments, and I think we'll probably see, for as long as Rubio is serving as Secretary of State, this will be one of the roles that he plays. The way that Rubio tried to clean up, the way that Rubio tried to reframe what Trump said, he said it was not meant in a hostile manner. It was meant in a generous manner. And actually, as I was rewatching it just now, you can always tell when Trump moves from what he's reading or the teleprompter to his own language.
Right.
What was written down clearly was, "We will take over Gaza," and then he added, and we will own it, and it will be amazing, something like that. And then he goes back to reading again, and he says, we will, oversee the reconstruction. And so if you try to piece together what was written and match it with what Rubio was saying, what Rubio said, it was a offer made out of generosity, not hostility, that we are willing, the U.S. is willing to do a lot of the reconstruction work and there are enormous, untold numbers of unexploded ordnance, throughout Gaza. Like, that's a fact. Like, that does need to be dealt with. So what he's saying is we will do that. We will do that demolition work, and we will do the reconstruction work. And Rubio even implied and even said out that they'd be coming back.
The unexploded.
Who dropped?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So Trump was there with Netanyahu. He could have asked Netanyahu if he had any idea, where, how this became a demolition site, or where all of this ordnance came from.
Basically, he called it a hellhole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a natural disaster. In just an unfortunate circumstance, which is the way that he was talking about it. And to hear him talk about it with Netanyahu sitting right there was a little extra deranged. But so to take Trump seriously, the problem with his suggestion there is that it's not completely uninhabitable. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians can return to their homes, and their homes are not destroyed. There are also other places within Gaza that people could go. They could also go to the West Bank. They could go to the Negev Desert. To your point, who did this destruction? Israel did this destruction. Therefore, why are they asking Egypt and Jordan? And he's mentioned maybe there'll be some other places that'll handle this. Like, if people need to be moved while there's reconstruction, it's Israel's responsibility to house them somewhere. And then they're going to have a right of return to Gaza because Israel doesn't want them there.
So many things to unpack here because Hamas, right? This is at the heart of it, right? So Hamas, according to sources I've spoken with, is largely still intact, functioning. So is the United States now going to be a police force there to go and try to stop Hamas? This is why so many MAGA supporters and so many Trump supporters, I see them in our chat right now saying, I don't want us in the Middle East at all. Get out of the Middle East.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't sign up for this. So are American forces now going to be involved in trying to root out Hamas?
One of Trump's attractive qualities to a lot of MAGA supporters was his willingness to call out the Republican establishment for its adventurism in the Middle East, specifically the Iraq War. To then come full circle and say, we're going to go back in, which he was asked directly, does this mean U.S. boots on the ground? And Trump said, if that's what it means, then yes. To Rubio today said, no, of course not. We're not doing that. So, you make of it what you will, but he's still the president. He still said it, but you're right.
Right.
If he's trying to get 1.7 million people out who don't want to leave because they're being told they're not going to be allowed back in, then you have to take them out violently. And that means troops, and that means casualties.
I've tried to come around to envision this utopia that he has. Maybe for anyone who's ever been to Dubai or Sharm el-Sheikh, and you see these cities that are being built up as international places of travel and commerce, and they're beautiful, and people who live in those countries are really proud of those places. So there is maybe this idea, because it's beachfront property, that it could be this beautiful tourism mecca that is redone and controlled by the United States and then handed off. It's really hard. It's hard, right? Because you know that the two-state solution is going to be fought in a bloody way in perpetuity. And there's this like utopia that seems so unlikely. And so most of us just don't know what to do with those two conflicting visions. Plus the idea that if Trump or one of his successors is not a Republican, the Democrats would just give it up and go back to fighting. So I think that's what I'm chewing on. Are you also digesting something like that?
You're right. Interestingly, like there is a path. Like Hamas has said that it is willing to be just a basically rebranded element of a technocratic government, and it'd be willing. There are indications that under the right circumstances they'd be willing to disarm and engage in the political process. And then if you have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, funding the redevelopment of Gaza, and you have, the Palestinians would love nothing more than to have, serious reconstruction funded in a peaceful way and in a way that allows them to benefit as well as everyone else in the world. Go ahead, come visit Gaza, that just like you visit Doha or Dubai. But you're right. The obstacle there is Israel. Israel doesn't want to see that. Israel is currently not allowing in basic humanitarian aid, let alone like even bulldozers or the kinds of things that you would need to begin taking steps in that direction. So that is an impasse that Trump would have to use political capital to get through. And then, exactly what happens when somebody else comes.
Great. Let me just follow up on this, because you speak about humanitarian aid, and then in the same day, the White House announces that it will no longer participate with certain United Nations organizations such as UNRWA, which is the main organization that has funneled aid into there. And Israel says they helped plan and execute October 7th, so they're our main enemy. Yeah. And so Trump then does something exactly what they would want. And so do you think that that's possibly something he gave Israel in order to work this deal or something? It's interesting. He's constantly giving Israel things. In the same press conference, he said that within 4 weeks, he's going to decide whether or not he's going to allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which is, and the whole thing is, these are wild just constructions to even think about. Like, who's the United States to allow Israel to annex, territory that they have no right to, right. Or either way, he's saying he's going to make that decision. Miriam Adelson gave him more than $100 million, and it was reported that when she gave it to him, that was her demand, that he allow for the annexation of the West Bank, just like she previously demanded that he move the capital, the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which he did, and he's very proud of. He also brags about how he quote unquote gave them the Golan Heights, which they've since expanded their control over. So it's this given push and pull where he's consistently giving them things that Democrats would never even dream of giving them, yet also then pushing them in the other direction, like pushing them to do a ceasefire. When if Kamala Harris were elected, we'd still have the low grade bombing campaign going on, presumably. There was no indication that she was willing to use any pressure or political capital to get to a ceasefire. So it's a very confusing moment.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be positive here, because at the heart of it, Trump, we know, negotiated a ceasefire. So there's a ceasefire in place. People are not dying largely in the way that they were before.
Well, they are in Lebanon. So.
Yes, but I mean, right now, taking the wins where we can get them, small, like incremental wins. So, but it's also the criticism of Trump is that he usually ends up going with the thing that the last person in the room has told him. Friend of the show, Colonel Douglas McGregor, who worked for Trump, said that this was the big frustration, that the last person to speak to Trump is where Trump usually went with his decision-making process. And I couldn't help but thinking if we, Jared Kushner, and his involvement. We know Jared Kushner's involvement in this area, and had vowed to turn Gaza into a Riviera. And all this waterfront property could be very valuable. And so did he have his ear before Benjamin Netanyahu came to town? Was Jared Kushner in the room, like talking about this utopia in Gaza that could be built? There's memes floating around in Israeli press today of Trump Tower Gaza. Like, of course,
I
want to say I don't believe
it. There's been reporting that Jared's idea was part of the mix here. And that Jared has been talking to him about this, and that he and Witkoff and Trump are talking about it like the real estate guys that they are. Trump, it's all fundamentally who he is. You heard him talking about North Korea, I bet, recently, where he was talking about all the amazing coastline that North Korea's got. He can't unsee dollar signs and waterfront real estate, and so the idea that he's going to be able to successfully move them to Egypt and Jordan is an utter fantasy. Like, it's not like asking Mexico to send 10,000 National Guard to the border. You're asking those governments to likely collapse. So, and no government is going to willingly strike a deal that would likely lead to their own collapse. There's no amount of pressure you could put on somebody to get them to do that.
We'll get you out of here on this, which is Scott Adams' tweet today. I'm just curious your thoughts. I think a lot of people right now watching our show, I can just see it in the chat room here. A lot of people are saying, kind of struggling with this, right? It's not. I don't think it's cut and dry. It's not cut and dry. If you think it's cut and dry, I think you're in.
Come see us on tour in Dallas, Austin, Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, New York, Atlantic City, Levittown, Cohost, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for the link for the cheapest tickets. So Piers Morgan sat down with Tucker Carlson. We already showed you some of it, where Piers Morgan was unaware that NATO is an offensive organization. There's no point to NATO. And Tucker Carlson schooled him. And I loved what he said. He says, now would be the time when you admit defeat. And he didn't. He wouldn't admit it. But here is Tucker Carlson, as Kali Sehag points out. Tucker Carlson has the moral clarity that the entire liberal establishment lacks on this topic. And what topic is it? As Israel is targeting and slaughtering non-combatants, meaning women and children, in a war. They're targeting them and they slaughter them. So I think something like 70 to 80% of the people killed in Gaza were non-combatants. 70 to 80%.
Wow.
So
it's better than Obama's drone program, which, as you know, was 90% innocent people.
Yeah. Did you know that? Obama's drone program killed 90% innocent people. Just
worse
so you know.
than Israel.
We're actually worse than Israel.
Obama.
And so here's Tucker Carlson is correct on this and says, hey, you know what? That's actually evil. And watch what Piers Morgan says. I'll give you a spoiler. He says, is it? Watch this. Watch this.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. Maybe you can make.
I agree with that.
Maybe
he says, he says, so Tucker says, if you're intentionally killing children, you probably shouldn't brag about it. And Piers Morgan says, I agree with that part. So killing children is fine. Just don't brag about it.
Well, you can always ban TikTok to cover up your brags about it.
Just don't brag about it. Okay, here we go.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. Maybe you can make.
I agree with that.
Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should.
I agree.
You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And I know it's really threatening to.
Is it evil?
Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever? But
is it evil
to kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Really?
Kids and children. Well, how is it not actually
in a war?
Well, you can call it whatever you want. How is it right?
Evil, you stupid Brit.
He says to intentionally. So Tucker says to intentionally kill children and women is evil, and Piers Morgan's response is it really? Really? He says,
Isn't it, Piers?
All right. So let's see if we can listen to the whole thing through without interrupting.
If you're intentionally killing civilians, you probably shouldn't beat your chest and brag about it. You know, maybe you could make.
I agree with that.
Maybe you make the case that we had to do it or whatever, but you should.
I agree.
You should weep, and that's evil, and you should just say it's evil. And I know it's really threatening to.
Is it evil?
Ben Shapiro to say that or whatever.
Is it evil though? At that point, a sinkhole should open up and swallow him. Is it evil though? Targeting women and children. Is it evil? If that's not evil, what is? Inflating the price of your property to get a bank loan? What is evil?
Hey, let's ask ChatGPT if it's evil. Let's ask the AI if it's evil.
Piers Morgan's on the fence about what? Well, he's not even on the fence. He's not even on the fence. Piers Morgan is cool with killing children. He doesn't think that's wrong, slaughtering children.
I thought we were better than the Al-Qaeda's and the ISIS's is. I thought they were so much better, the West. And we know it's evil to do that. And terror is bad.
Right.
I thought we knew that. But is it evil?
And so now watch why he says it's not evil.
Is it evil?
To kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Really?
Kids and children.
I mean, just the fact that that's a question. Is it evil? Is it? I'm a grown man.
To kill the guy from United Healthcare?
Is it evil?
Is that evil?
Is it evil?
I bet Pierce knows that's evil.
Is it evil to target children? Target children, which is what the IDF does, because the autopsies show that the bullets came right in their head.
Yeah.
How is it not actually?
In a war?
In a war?
You can call it whatever you want. How is it right to kill women and children?
I didn't say, because I think there is a moral right behind you if you are literally...
To kill women and children?
If there's a world war that threatens the entire...
There's a moral right.
Dispute.
So it's okay to literally slaughter women and children, non-combatant, target them during a war. Because it's a war. And not a world war. And that you are morally right. You have moral justification behind slaughtering women and children. So again, there's no difference between... So how is Hamas bad then? Because that was a war, and they went and slaughtered non-combatants. How is that bad? They cut the heads off of 40 babies, which they didn't. How is that bad? It's a war. It's okay. That's what he's saying. So hang on. So let's listen to the rest of it.
Threatens the entire world? Yes.
Some people killed your kids, like your 8-year-old. Like,
well,
how is that morally justifiable?
Well, because actually you have to. Well, by your criteria,
it's disgusting.
Okay, so no war is morally justified.
I mean, I think it's pretty hard to justify. I mean, yeah, I'm sure.
War.
A pure defensive action.
Yeah, all the wars, Piers. You cunt.
But all I'm saying, look, it's all ugly. It's all hard to stomach. I've actually seen some of it up close. Super ugly.
You can say that. You can say you hate it.
May I finish?
The fact you quibble with it being morally justified.
To intentionally kill non-combatants, women and children, I think we can say that's wrong. In fact, I thought that was the thing we were fighting against.
Not Piers Morgan, because that's where the unconditional support of Israel finally leads you to slaughtering women and children is morally justified because it's a war. And the people who were justifying that before, to me personally, would say, well, look what we did in Dresden, Jimmy. Look what we did in Japan with the nuclear bomb.
And I would say,
those are called war crimes. And you know that ever since then, that's why we invented the UN, and that's why we have the Geneva Convention, and that's why we have the rules of war that say you can't do those things anymore because it's inhuman and barbaric and inherently evil. That's why we did it. So they go back to World War. Yeah, we changed after that. We realized this is unbelievable. We're all animals. We can't do that. We're supposed to be better than the terrorists. No, we are the terrorists, and so he's sitting there going, "Is it? He literally is asking the question: is it evil to target children and slaughter them?
Well, if it's a world war. Well, by the way, those two things that he's defending, he's thinking of Dresden and Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's when it's in his dumb jelly head while he says that. But both those hideous crimes that we didn't do those right in the beginning of the goddamn war. The war had been dragging on for some time. That wasn't our opening move, was Dresden and the atomic bomb. You understand? So to do it right up front is real sick.
So, and if a bomb came anywhere near Piers Morgan's house, he'd be squealing for his life. He'd be consistent in that he wasn't actually worried about women and children. He'd just be worried about his ascot and his sherry and his polo gear.
Well, also his brother is military and his brother-in-law is a scumbag that was stationed there. And that's his. My brother-in-law was there, and bloop, 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 NATO.
Yeah, that's
dude. Screw your brother. Tell your brother I said go screw yourself. I want to say the F word, but I keep trying to stop myself.
Thank you.
I hate him. I hate him. I hate him.
Well, what am I saying?
When Piers doesn't have 4 idiots that are talking over each other, he doesn't hold up for 3 seconds. You know? He needs 4 people that stand there and talk over each other for him to look smart. And in one-on-one, he's not at all smart.
It must be nice having the MI6 keep your career alive when there is simply no way on earth he would be anything but an Uber Eats driver otherwise. Well, yes, I ate half your pasta on the way over here, but is it wrong? Is it? It's a war.
He would never be hired.
I know. So I tweeted out this video of him saying that. And what I said was, so yes, Piers Morgan fully endorses and wholeheartedly supports slaughtering children and women and all sorts of non-combatants. Full stop. The thing we're all supposed to be against. The thing that shocked our conscience so much during World War II that the whole of humanity changed the rules of war. Piers Morgan is for the thing that shocked our conscience. He's for that.
Right.
This is where blindly supporting Israel ends up. Morally bankrupt monsters embracing slaughtering children. With a straight face, sitting in a suit jacket, with his khakis on and his sockless deck shoes.
Yeah. It's not just Israel. He's supporting the entire British hideous empire and every crime they ever did. He's not just... Israel is being justified by the crimes that we did during World War II, which I thought everybody had to read Kurt Vonnegut in school, where Kurt Vonnegut was trapped in Dresden, and that's what Slaughterhouse 5 is about. But I guess people don't read books and stuff.
Right.
I thought that was a crime for many years just from reading that book.
So then, underneath my tweet, this guy says, chairman of the board says, you always seem to gloss over how the whole effing thing started and the hostages that we're taking. He's talking about Israel. And I go, it started in 1948 with Nakba.
Yeah, was he talking about the raid outside the concentration camp that Netanyahu encouraged them to have, and he paid them? The terrorists that attacked them were paid for by their president?
So how do you like that for moral clarity? P.S. Jimmy Dore is the chairman of the board. And don't you forget it, punk.
Are you the chairman of the board now?
I don't know. I'm just making it up. I'm just making it up. Because that guy said he was chairman.
Sinatra was called that because he worked for the CIA.
He was saying he's the chairman of the board. I'm just coming in with the moral clarity chairman of the board.
Yeah, you chairman is suck my dick, Rich.
So get this. Piers Morgan retweets my tweet. It offended him. And he says, try watching the actual interview in proper context when perhaps you wouldn't post... Then perhaps you wouldn't post such... By the way, what context makes it cool to target children and slaughter them? There is no context.
Is it evil? A world war?
Is
it? That was evil.
Is it evil? Is it evil?
You fat ponce.
So
he is just a jelly. He's like everything of British private school that you would make fun of is Piers Morgan.
So then he goes on to say, try watching the actual interview in proper context. Then perhaps you wouldn't post such unutterably stupid garbage.
You did utter it. It's not. Here's what's unutterably stupid is to say, is it evil to blow kids up on purpose?
So then I just reposted what he said. To purposely target women and children, I think it's evil. Piers, is it evil? Tucker, is it evil to kill civilians on purpose? Yeah, I think it is. Piers, really? Tucker, how is it right to kill women and children? Piers, because I think there's a moral right behind you. Tucker, to kill women and children? Piers, if you're fighting a world war.
We're not, Piers.
And I said,
dumbass.
And I said to him, this is where you have to admit you said what you said because you said it, even if you don't understand how a video record of you saying it works.
Tucker said the same thing. Was he out of context sitting there in front of your dumb fat face? Was Tucker not getting the context of your idiot comments?
And the British have colonized the entire world through phrases such as inexorably mad, unfathomably dull, unutterably stupid. We live on boiled haggis. We marry our first cousins, but we're mean.
Dude, every time they try to trash Arabs for cousin marriage, I like to point out that all the Islamists you're talking bad about, they're as inbred as your King Charles. King Charles is as inbred as any Pakistani Islamist people blame the Jews, but it's the British. It's these fat toffs. That's who's behind the whole thing. The Anglo-American world power, these scumbags. It's not the Jews. It's the Brits. And you can hear it come out of his awful... he's the biggest scumbag in the world. That's why he's backing Israel, because it supports what England did. You know that drug cartel that took over for a while? That's where their money comes from. King Charles is a drug kingpin.
So what this means when I say this is that I'm actually indicting what we did, what the Allies did in World War II, which is not going to get you a seat at the Grammys, Kurt.
No, it will not.
It will not.
It was worse than 9/11, what we did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That's a bigger crime. And so is Dresden. Dresden was a hideous crime that there's no excuse for. You know, how about instead of firebombing women and children to break their spirit, how about we firebomb the actual Nazis instead of saving them and bringing them to America to make America suck?
To run our science programs.
Yeah, Werner von Braun, instead of put him on Disney, why don't we burn him with fire? How about that? That would have been moral.
I mean, I've heard Piers Morgan breathlessly defend mandating experimental medical treatments, dangerous. And harmful experimental medical treatments on people. I've heard him do that. I've heard him defend the indefensible Ukraine war, which should have been over 5 minutes after it started, but NATO made them rip up the peace agreement, and now they're going to get a worse deal than they ever did after 500,000 of them got slaughtered. I've heard him do that. I've heard him defend Israel. I've heard him do lots of crazy. I never thought I would hear him look with a straight face, question whether targeting children for slaughter is it evil. Not only that, but then saying you have a moral right to do it. Well, that is Al Qaeda, ISIS stuff that we've been taught is Al Qaeda, ISIS stuff. We've been told
Osama wrote it in his message to us. Osama wrote a letter of why it's okay for me to kill your women and children, and it pretty much echoed what Piers said.
What Piers just said. So again, this whole thing, Carl Jung could not be more than 1,000% right. So the people who scream the loudest about Hamas or about Al Qaeda or ISIS or Russia or China are just as big or bigger monsters than the people they claim to be fighting. Because what that reveals right there is that Piers Morgan is a monster in his soul. That he is... This isn't some guy who spends all day selling hot dogs at the beach. This is a guy who, for a living, has been a news person and is supposed to be there to inform people. And he's like, no, you have a moral right to slaughter women and children. You do.
You don't remember Piers is the guy that was helping with the news of the world, the hacking into people's phones because that kidnapped girl. He's part of that. Remember that? Remember that big scandal, the Rupert Murdoch thing?
Well, Kurt, you have to talk about that in context.
Piers, when you say something as crazy as what you said directly to everyone's face, do you think we don't go, wait a minute, maybe I'm not getting the context? Because what you said is so insane. Of course, we all assume we didn't understand the context because who would say the thing you said?
That's
you
right.
Fat idiot.
That's
and then
right.
when we looked at the context, you were indeed saying the idiotic thing that your fat British toff mouth said. You inbred.
Well, Miko, right now, as we're talking, Trump made some major announcements.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
The man is an absolute lunatic. the proposition that they will level it, get rid of 2 million people, and then develop it for European settlers, basically, white settlers. This is so sickening. This is so grotesque. I don't even know. I literally feel like I want to throw up, because it's in the headlines on Ynet, the Israeli paper.
Yeah. What are they saying?
The U.S. will take over Gaza, will flatten it, and then 1.8 million people will have to leave. And then he said he will visit Israel and Gaza, and we will clear out the bombs and destroy homes. It's a great idea. And Netanyahu responded by saying, it's great. It'll bring a new future to the region. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So the Palestinians are the ones that have to go? Palestinians are the ones that have to go, not the people who caused the violence, not the people who caused the destruction. The discourse is so skewed and insane. Why is it the Palestinians have to go? It's their land. It's their country. It's the settlers that have to go, if anybody. I think it was the Iranian president or something that said that. If anybody's got to go, it's the people who came, it's the settlers who came and brought the violence. And then he says, yes, we will. And then Netanyahu did not express, he was happy with it. And then there was a threat that if they don't release the hostages, blah, 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 there'll be more violence. We had a wonderful conversation. He says, if I was president, then the October 7th wouldn't have happened. Yeah, this rhetoric is grotesque. It's disgusting. It's racist to a point that is beyond even belief. And it's not going to happen. It's absolutely not going to happen. There's no way they would have Palestinians. They would have to kill 2 million Palestinians if they want to clear Palestinians out of it. But this idea, and actually the Israeli papers earlier today were saying, because there's the discourse, the Israeli discourse is all about this idea of what they call voluntary migration, to encourage voluntary migration. Well, how do you encourage it? By bombing people, making their lives unlivable. And then they say, well,
cleansing, right?
Well, of course that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
What they're saying is we'll start with that, and we'll start with Gaza, and then we'll go to Jenin.
Right.
And then Palestinians will have a better life. When Palestinians don't want a better life elsewhere. If you're worried about Palestinians having a better life, let them live in their country, allow them to go back to their homes. And if you don't want to live with Arabs, why did you come? It's like, I don't know if you saw this thing that he did, Trump did with a pencil or with a pen.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? That's a pretty big difference. I use that as an analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually. It's a pretty small piece of land. And it's amazing that they've been able to do what they've been able to do. When you think about it, there's a lot of good, smart brain power. But it is a very small piece of land, no question about it.
But the settlers came to the Middle East. Why did they come if it's a good place? If they don't like it, what are they doing there? They came to an Arab country. They came to a country that's predominantly Muslim. And now they want to ban the call for prayer. They want to destroy the country. They want to get rid of all the history that shows it was an Arab, predominantly Muslim country for, over 1,500 years. It's insane. And now the conversation, the normalization of the conversation of the ethnic cleansing, of getting rid of 2 million people. I don't even know if the Nazis were this blunt when they talked about the Jews. It took a while before this so blunt about it. We're talking about, Nuremberg trials all over again. It's so blunt. They're just so blunt about it.
Yeah.
They try to hide it. It's this hubris. Don't they realize that one day they will be judged? I don't know how it is that they're not realizing, they have no sense of history, that there will be a time when they are going to have to answer for this. No, it's not going to happen. 2 million people are not going to be thrown out of Gaza. It's not going to happen. And then what they say is, see, we can't get rid of them because nobody wants them, because these Palestinians are so horrible that no country wants them. And so that's the issue.
Right. They always do that. Yeah.
That's not the issue. It's so sickening. But look at it. It couldn't be more formal. It couldn't be more more clear that this is what they're planning to do. I don't know how it is that there's not massive outcry about this. I don't understand. I mean, every government around the world needs to stand up and kick out the American ambassadors, of course, the Israeli ambassadors too. And we've got to stop this. Yeah, this is insane. This discourse is absolutely sickening.
We actually have some more clips of videos that I think we should have you react to, Miko.
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding's happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, it's. I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. And so if we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die, because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again. It's happened over and over again, and it's going to happen again as sure as you're standing there, Peter. So I hope that we could do something where they wouldn't want to go back. Who would want to go back? They've experienced nothing but death and destruction.
Why have they experienced nothing but death and destruction? I mean, is it related to the guy who's literally sitting next to you?
It just came. I mean, it became, Gaza's a terrible place. It's just all death and destruction. Gaza was beautiful. Gaza was known, about pre-1948, for beautiful dunes, beautiful beaches, great seafood, the fragrance of citrus, because they're full of citrus groves there. It was wonderful. Millennia of history and culture, rich history and rich heritage and great pride in Gaza and its history and so on. The only reason there's destruction is because the guy, like you said, sitting next to him and his predecessors brought destruction there. They destroyed it. They're killing. It's not like the place is plagued. He creates this impression, let's take them out of there so they have a better life. Why would they want to stay? Why would they want to go back? I mean, this is so. And none of these journalists have the spine to stand up and say, "Excuse me, the man sitting next to you is a genocidal maniac that has made the place hell, and they want to stay because it's their country. If anybody's got to go, it's him. He's got to go back to where his parents came from." Nobody says that. What is it with these journalists that they don't have a spine that they can stand up and say this? These two maniacs sitting in the room. And Netanyahu's big smile, he's all happy to hear this. This is the most radical Zionist ideology we've ever heard. It was usually subtle. It wasn't really said that way. In the 1980s, my father was a member of the Knesset, and Meir Kahane was also in the Knesset. And Meir Kahane was really the father of this ethnic cleansing, of this really kind of crude and blunt demand for ethnic cleansing and transfer of Palestinians. No member of Knesset would sit next to him, next to Kamala, because they were embarrassed that, because this rhetoric was so insane. This is what Donald Trump is talking about now. Like this Kahana, this racist lunatic is now, happy in his grave. It's insane. It's beyond, I don't know. People are completely out of their minds. And I don't know why there's not a harsher reaction to. We'll see tomorrow what people say, what the papers say. If there's not an absolute reaction to this, where people speak about it as one of the most grotesque things we've ever heard coming out of the White House, then we've really all lost our minds. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That is absolutely grotesque. Why would they want to go back? And nobody's there to say, what do you mean, why would they want to go back? It's their home. That's where they're from. It's really grotesque. I mean, I don't know what else to call it.
I think it goes on because people don't know the history behind it. So without any context and only getting one side of the story, it's very easy to side with the same story that 9 out of 10, dare I say, 90 out of 100 people would have on the topic, because people aren't read into the matter. They haven't seen more than one side of the matter, right? For instance, would be you could go to Rumble and you could watch the underground history of Israel-Palestine, and you can make your own decisions. You could check the facts. You could see if I'm wrong. You could see if I'm marshaling facts incorrectly, or if they're not relevant, or if they're not substantial, or if they're not valid. I think it would be a life-saving endeavor if people understood both sides and could actually make an educated choice on the matter. And when you get down to, terrible things happened during World War II. Terrible things happen during war in general. The fact that World War II is used as an excuse that, this group of people needed their own nation state is disingenuous to the facts and the truth and the matter that go back to the 1840s, at the very least, of a Anglo-Israeli or proto-Israeli, Anglo-Zionist, proto-Zionist, because these terms came along later in the evolution of the idea, but a return to Palestine. And this is called for by many British elites and people of power over there. Lord Palmerston, there's a number of Lord Shaftesbury. There's a whole bunch of people who called for the restoration of the Jews to Palestine, and that's a idea that goes on far beyond before World War II. So I don't think that Piers Morgan is ignorant to the situation. I think he's somebody who's willing to say whatever it takes for money. He's a sophist. He's not there for the truth of the matter. Tucker Carlson, I also treat him with a little incredulity, but at least he comes down on the right side of the fence as a human being in the situation, because, the Piers Morgan attitude is very much the attitude of the British Empire, which was fine making their wealth from plundering other people's lives through the opium monopoly. People in Britain knew that was going on. They were fine. They approved of it. It was openly talked of. In our country, the support of narco-terrorism is supposed to be a bad thing. I think it is a bad thing, but the people in power definitely trade in that area and continue to do so, as we're about to continue learning. Scott, do you have notes on that section? It's a heavy-duty section. That's why we had to have Carl's Jr. before that.
I mean, really, just Trump really speaks off the cuff. He just kind of just riffs, and half the time he just doesn't even know what he's saying. His whole thing, his throwaway lines, why would they even want to return? I can maybe see what he meant. Why would they want to return to a heap of rubble? But the context to which that gets characterized is why would they want to return? Because it's their home, the lady screams. And that's my initial reaction too. It's how dare you, dude? It's infuriating because we know what's going on behind the scenes and who Trump, who his allegiance is to and all that stuff. And so it's it's frustrating for him to have that come out of his mouth, right? It doesn't help his cause or anyone's, it helps one group's cause, right? And it's frustrating. It's dehumanizing in a lot of ways, and it's just frustrating. Of course, the Piers Morgan thing, it just goes without saying. I can't say it any better than what Kurt and Jimmy said, right? It's just it's just shameful. It's disgusting. And again, it kind of also goes to that's what's on his mind. He doesn't have the lens or the filter to be able to have a nuanced view of this. It's very black and white to him. And I would just say too, this show in particular, ever since October 7th, before I was even involved, with the show, I was watching this show, listening to this show every week, and learning so much, digesting so much information about the Israel situation. I've had a PhD level course in that whole situation. So much stuff I didn't even know about, a year and a half ago, that I've learned through watching this show. And this show stands as Richard always says, it's a time capsule, but also it's an educational archive. It's such a valuable resource, using clip. If any one of these topics or names or events, you're oh, I want to know more about that, just go to Clip Genie, type it in. I almost guarantee it's been covered over the course of the last 16 months or whatever, right? It's this show stands as a massive library of information, and that's what I think is just one of the most incredibly valuable things about this show and the work that you do. I've learned so much, and even now, having digested all this information, it's fun. Like the pieces are starting to connect, names are starting to become more familiar. I'm able to recall information when I'm talking to other people, things like that. And so having that breadth of information is so incredibly valuable, and you can just tell these people don't, whether it's through ignorance or intentionally closing themselves off to that. It's like they are in a position where they can't afford to learn this information, because if they did, they would lose everything. They would have to change their opinion, or so it's either that or they just have to just push it down and just be like, they have to be ignorant. They have to be ignorant. Otherwise they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. That's just how it works.
That's their choice. We don't have to tolerate their ignorance. We don't have to accept it for our own decisions. I try to, it's easy to dismiss Trump taking over Gaza, right? But what are the options? It's destroyed. Do you want Israel to rebuild it in their image? Yeah. Or maybe if someone educated Trump on the situation, if he watched the underground history of Israel-Palestine, he's like, oh, there's more to this. How would you now go about fixing Gaza? Well, you got to take it away from Israel. You can't let them continue to destroy that and mess with those people. It needs to be rebuilt for the people that live there. Anyone who's got a key around their neck for the past 60, 80 years, yeah, you get a spot. You get jobs, you get some subsidies. If the United States through USAID can be funding, kids in Israel to go to Tel Aviv University or whatever all that money was just going to, where they get free college anyway, you can give it to the people whose houses you blew up and whose kids you blew up and tortured and all this other shit that's gone on. Because that's the nice solution. The other solution would be people look at the real data and they say, maybe the colonizers need to go back to where they came from. Now, how long do we apply that back in history? I don't think that's a very sustainable solution. It continues to make animosity. And in order to make peace, we actually, we need to know what's really going on and maybe who the aggressors are in the situation and who the victims are, and not get them mixed up just because one side has a bigger mouthpiece and a lot more money behind it. And that might be part of the issue, but that could also be part of the solution, because they could definitely afford to rebuild Gaza for the people who are the indigenous inhabitants of there. And they can also afford to move out of the West Bank. And they can also afford to probably do some other things for the people that they've displaced over the past 80 years, if they would like to continue being a state. Because people around the world, this is not my opinion, this is just observation from where I'm standing. People around the world, that's a one-way valve. And once they unfriended Israel over the past 18 months, it's not easy to get back on the friend list, especially with what people have seen and what they're realizing, what they're about to realize with respect to events like 9/11 or JFK. So last year you thought a lot of things came out. 2024, Cat Williams, all that good stuff. 2025's shaping up to be an even bigger year of people coming to realize the shadows on the wall, as it were, and exit the cave.
Yeah, and I think an argument could be made that this is 5D chess going on. There's a lot of things that could indicate that.
You could downstream Bibi, yeah,
you could downstream a lot of this stuff, like some of the posts Trump made. I can't remember. Oh, Jeffrey Sachs, that one thing he was saying where he was just ripping on Israel and the Zionist thing. It's like, how can Trump get away with posting that on his Truth Social? Maybe Trump is just doing a stopgap move, like you described, to prevent Israel from their continued expansion, and
because
then flip it on
goal.
Yeah, exactly. We know that's the goal.
And he's like, since that's not your goal, you won't mind if we take it then, because that's not your goal, right?
Yeah.
And they've already taken the Golan Heights and other things that are going on since the USS Liberty happened back in the day. So maybe somebody has read Trump on the larger picture, and Trump's like, this is his chance to get away from the Rothschilds and that infrastructure, and there could be a bifurcation. But that to me seems more comic bookish than actual what's going to happen.
Part of me just wants to trust the plan, and just patriots are now in charge. I'm part of me really wants to be there, but we have to be pragmatic about it. But at the same time, hey, why not? We're all just taking in information, just having a good time. Really, with this, I really hope that people, this is such an important point, is that through all this, like it might be scary, it might be like we might be rah rah rah, go our team and all this stuff, but at the same time, like at the end of the day, like me sitting here in this chair, is there anything that we can do about it, like at all, really? Like other than educating, like we're doing our due diligence, and this right here is about the most like any one of us can do on an individual basis. So just enjoy it, and so it doesn't matter if I let my mind wander a little bit and the whole saving Israel for last type of scenario. Like it's okay to have these little thoughts and stuff. It's just like, don't let it get to you, folks. It might get really scary. It might get really amazing. Just sit back and enjoy it for what it is. Do what you can where you can, but at the most part, this is the most amazing movie in existence. I can't keep my eye off it. It's getting more hilarious, like by the minute. Like apparently just like in the last couple hours, Elon posted about how the Department of Education's gone.
I got that because it's better the way. What is the Department of Education you keep talking about? I just checked and it doesn't exist. That's what he says.
Yeah, so it's like things are happening in like absolute real time. Like I can't keep my eyes off it. Like it's so entertaining. I just love it. I look at it all as just entertainment. I like to be in that zone where it's just like it doesn't ruin none of this will ever ruin my day. Like I feel sorry for that guy in that one clip. He's like, I'm just sick to my stomach. I was like, well, you're doing what you can do. You're doing activist work. It is terrifying. It is horrible, but we have to live our lives, and we got to
maintain your attitude of gratitude.
Yeah,
at all
exactly.
times. You can't let the stuff get you down.
Yeah.
I got a whole bookshelf here of people who live their life and focus their life on destroying the Department of Education. Gatto, Iserby, Samuel Blumenfeld. I've got Imperial Brain Trust and Compromise Campus, and all these ones they're saying like I don't know what they're going to create in its place. But, these seem like small wins on the playing field. I'm not saying there are wins. I'm just saying, like, to get rid of the Department of Education that was like the behemoth of the communist state-sponsored woke education system, proponent of Common Core, all these other ways of infecting young people with ideas that don't reflect reality anymore. They'll have to find another way. Like their vehicle just got burned. They just dumpster fire torched it. So it's the wait and see. I like the wait and see attitude. Wait and see. Oh, that's going to be really good. Well, we're going to wait and see. That's going to be really bad. Well, we're going to wait and see. And I'm going to continue to wait and see as we go along and we see. But yeah, I would think Gatto or Iserby or any of those characters that wrote about such things, they would be very happy if they made
smiling
it this far.
down right now.
That would be a very big win for them. So don't get distracted. Right? Like Han Solo said to Luke, don't get cocky, kid. Just because you shot something doesn't mean like we're going to win the battle. But it's good to see he's got good aim. Now, what's the deal with Kanye? Because I had that scheduled for... There's some shit that happened this week in a variety of ways. But he went dark on Twitter. He went dark.
He deleted his account, apparently.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, we all saw your tweets, bro. That was the tweet storm of the week. I mean, when I saw it going on, I was like, ooh, what's the context? And I went back and he's got like 100 tweets in all caps. Just saying the most provocative stuff he could say. The most incendiary words he could put down in 200 characters or whatever. And he was rocking. He was rocking people with that. And so I do have a small update at the end of the show. But we got important stuff to cover.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.